Come on. There we go. I think we're doing okay at the moment. Obviously it does take a while to get any of the jobs done, but the fields aren't too big that you get frustrated because, oh, I just want to get this job over. And that's part of the problem I had with things like New Bartelshagen was, I mean, those fields were big, and it took me 2 weeks of stream, 2 weeks of stream to complete a harvesting job on the one of the smaller fields that I didn't own. And we did have some fairly big equipment there, but it was just, I mean, not that I complain about the amount of money we made off the job, it's just, it took so long. It's just not quite as painful as doing a potato harvest, but, this one we're kind of powering through. We'll take about 25 minutes to plough this field. But that's not an unduly agonising length of time. And it's the sort of, it's sort of field size that I don't mind doing sugar beets once in a while. Not that we can, because our tractor's too small. I think for a sugar beet harvester you need about 180 horse. So getting a 250 would open up poplars, sugar beets as an option. Maybe not something we do all of the time, but at least something that we can take a look at, because it's different. And yeah, people get frustrated with sugar beets, but that's because on most maps on a normal size field, it takes you half a day to do it. For cotton you kind of need big fields, because the only cotton harvester is the big self-propelled harvester. So you're looking at this thing, which is quite big. Not only that, but it drops big bales. I can't remember how big they are. There you go. 20,000 litre bales. So the bale's worth about £50,000 or 50,000 euros or dollars, whichever one you're playing with, which is nice income. But if you've got a tiny field can't generate one bale. I'm assuming you can unload the baler even on a partial, but if you want to sell full bales, you want a field big enough to generate a full bale, at least. Maybe leave the excess in the harvester for the next one. think that's what Arthur and Micah are doing on Estancia Lapacho. They have a large field for cotton, and they're looking for other large fields to add close by. But their whole setup is for cotton. They did end up buying a harvester because they wanted to grow oats, but yeah, if you're going to do cotton, that's a sizable expense in your harvesting and transport equipment. And when you're starting out, you're not necessarily going to have the money for. It's kind of like why people don't go more than one family of crops. Typically, most people go cereals because you can buy a harvester, you can buy a cereal header, and a seeder, and that'll see you everywhere. If you want to do corn and sunflowers, you've got to buy a different header for your harvester and different planters for your seed. No, the cotton shipping stuff, is that there? See, this thing, you reverse this up to a cotton bale and tip it, and it will roll the cotton bale onto the back, and then you lower that back down again, drive it off to where you're going, you tip it up to unload it. This one will take two, but you need a truck. So you don't need a huge front loader to move your cotton bales. The trailers are quite good at doing it themselves. But it is something you want to go, if you're going cotton, you're going cotton. And starting, you're probably not going to have equipment to do anything but cotton. Or you're going to have to make sacrifices somewhere. But like I was saying, on this farm I've got a harvester and the regular header and the corn header. So I can harvest any of the general crop types. However, all I got was a seeder, I didn't get a planter, so I have to go out and buy a planter if I want to plant sunflowers and corn. That's an expense, and I don't want to go to the expense of having two different types of seeders for different types of planting. Now there is one seeder that plants everything, but the problem is it's way too big to justify on this farm. It would be problematic to get around some of the fields with it. You'd end up missing more dirt than you planted in some cases. So it's something to be aware of, and it's why a lot of people don't start out doing sugar beets or doing potatoes, because the harvesting equipment is expensive and it's only good for sugar beets or potatoes. Now there's nothing to stop you as farm manager. You could probably go out with your starting equipment and say, I can afford that. That's $500,000. There's another 100,000. What size tractor do I need for that? So I'm going to need a 200 horsepower tractor. I could use that and bump up the engine. 200 horsepower tractor, 261, 255, so I could go that. 120,000 on the tractor. And I've not even purchased the seed or the fields yet. So, starting out with potatoes with a potato harvester is kind of expensive. Now you could go second best and it's only 160,000 for the potato harvesting equipment, and for that you also need about 200 horsepower tractor. So, and you still need the planter. But that planter, that seeding equipment, you could go potatoes with the 200 horsepower tractor. But then you're possibly not going to be able to afford a very large harvester if you want to do other crops other than potatoes. So your entire harvest is going, or your entire basis is going to be potatoes. And similar arguments can be made for sugar beets. You can go sugar beets, but it's going to cost you a lot of money to start up. And when you're starting up a new farm, you don't necessarily have a lot of money. So what most people look at is what's the most I can accomplish with the smallest outlay. Well, that was clever. That one again. I mean, you can go fairly cheap logging start. I could add logging to this farm for quite cheap. Problem is I'd have to buy a forest because there's not enough trees to warrant any forestry equipment right now. But the setup I used on Farm Sim 17 started out with this tractor. So this tractor, I've got the front loader. Let's go shopping for I need a chainsaw, it's 1,000. I need a log fork. Seriously, that one there, nothing else will do. There's another 2,000. So we've spent 3,000 so far. Now I need something to ship it on. Where's forestry? Forestry. Hello. Oh, why can't I see it? Forestry. There it is. So probably maybe something like that. So for about 25,000 I could set exactly what I have here up to do forestry. All they then need to do is buy a forest. They can be a little bit pricey. I did it again. Need to watch where my thumb is. Okay. But I've used that setup on Lawfold since I started. And I've murdered over 450 trees, I think. And it kept me in seed and fertilizer for the first year. Grass silage sort of thing is another thing to look at. You know, how much does the BGA cost you? Because that's the best place to sell silage. Do you have a silage clamp on your farm or one that is available to you at the BGA? Then cheap method, get yourself a big tractor with a few mower heads that you can attach to it. A loading wagon to collect the grass, probably a windmill thing, windrower. And then ferment the silage in a bunker, because that's kind of free if you've got the bunker available. That'll get you a lot of money, income-wise. Yes, not as much as it used to in earlier farm sim games, but it'll get you money in income-wise for a very, very low cost, startup cost. The other way to go, not that I would particularly recommend it long-term or for larger farms, but is perfectly adequate for this farm, is buy one of those. 150 horsepower for the tractor. Maybe once again, okay, 200 horsepower because we got to run that on the front. We got to haul a trailer behind us, and you can forage grass, stick it in a bunker, or forage corn, stick it in a bunker, wait a day, and make a fair amount of money. You don't need a harvester that's going to set you back 130,000. You don't need a forage harvester that's going to send you back 200. I've done it again. And good evening. Oh, my eyesight's going. Lanos, I believe. How you doing? But when you're starting up, you're looking for the best bang for the buck for the equipment you're buying. Now, because I started on new farmer mode so that I get all of the farm that you see in front of you right now, I only had 100,000 to play with. So I sold the starting tractors. I probably freed up 150,000 of starting equipment. But I kept the harvester in spite of the fact I wish I could use a different one, because any other harvester was going to eat up all of my money. Now eventually we'll get around to replacing that harvester, but probably not for a few years. But yeah, I lost my trainer. So basically now with the equipment I have, this is my first and last field of sunflowers, and the one over there was my first and last field of corn for a while, until I can justify the cost of buying a planter to replant that sort of crop. Go ahead, yeah, anybody can ask questions. I might be able to make up an answer for you. So what was the end of that one? That took about 30 minutes. It probably didn't, because we kept stopping and discussing stuff, but on the most part. No. So, the farm down there is a permanent structure. You can't sell any of it, unlike, say, Marwell Manor, where you are able to sell the farm. However, if you start in Farm Manager or start from scratch mode, none of the farm exists. That's an entire blank area. So you could go down there, plough it in, and turn it into more arable land. But you have to, you have to provide your own house and your own yard buildings. But you're not going to have a pig enclosure, a sheep enclosure, and a pair of cow enclosures to deal with if you don't want to use them. No, not with the mod either. Basically, the way this map has been designed is the main farmyard. You have it if you're a new farmer, and you don't have it if you're a farm manager or start from scratch. And there's nothing you can do to build it if you start as a farm manager, and there's nothing you can do to remove it if you're a new farmer. Now there is a placeable area just over behind the trees that are sort of bracketed by my what are they? The beacons. If you go straight back over the roof from there, there's a placeable area which you could plough up and increase, make more field if you wanted to. But new farmer, you start with 7 fields. It's just that if you don't aim to go with animals at any time, then you're losing a lot of space on the farm. Now, Marwell Manor was similar in that to have the farm, you had to start new farmer. And if you start from scratch or farm manager, you do not have the farmyard. However, Marwell Manor went one better for the new farmer in that you could sell the entire farm. And the farm contained a sheep enclosure and a cow enclosure. So if you didn't want to go with them, you could just sell the farm but provide your own buildings. The problem I have with Marwell is, and effectively with this map, is if you knock down, if you start without the yard, or if you sell the yard on Marwell, you can't rebuild it. The assets are not available to build the farm in that style. You have to use the regular in-game assets. So, what am I limited to here? Farmhouses. Okay, that's the default farmhouse I can put on this map. Obviously, there's mod houses I can use if I want to. Silos. I get the regular 3 silos, the hayloft, and bunkers. Now there's other stuff I've got available, but what decorations do we get? We get the sandcastle, get the barn, the farm garage, farm storage shelter. Well, there you go. Miscellaneous, I can get a washer. So we've actually got one of those on the farm. There's a workshop built into one of the buildings. I'd have to buy that as a separate thing. Animal pens. I don't have any of the any of the animal pens that we have here. I would have to use the in-game ones. And to me, that's a bit of a shame, because I like the style of the map, and to basically demolish the farm and have to build it new, you're replacing it with a different architecture. So like I was saying about the new shop on this map, you're sort of the modern world encroaching on an old village. Now it's something I do give kudos to Alien Jim on the Mercury Farms map, is that if you start in new farmer mode, all the yards have buildings on them, but the buildings are assets that are available on that map only. So you can go in, you can demolish a yard, and you can put your own asset, you can rebuild the yard in the architectural style of the map, but to your own taste. If you go new farmer mode, you start with completely blank yards, but all of the assets that are on the new farmer start are available for you to use in building one of the yards that you purchase. And I like that. That is a really good way of doing things. Now, obviously the Mercury Farms yards aren't as integrated as, say, the Old Stream Farm map is, but I could, I could take the yard that currently has 4 chicken coops on it and put a silo on it and a farmhouse on it and a couple of storage sheds for vehicles, and it would look like all of the other architecture on that map. So I'm kind of hoping more people look at how and what Alien Jim did and look at providing their farm assets as something we can use on other yards. 'Cause a lot of the maps, especially these early ones, they really are built as either single player or single farm cooperatives. They're not really designed as multiplayer maps where you can have multiple yards on them. And so you kind of get what you're given. I mean, some of the maps that I've taken a look at, the only difference between New Farmer and Farm Manager and starting from scratch is how much money you start with and how much land you start with. On New Farmer you have some land and on the other two you don't, and you have 100,000, 1.25 million or 500,000 depending on which start you take. But the way they've coded the map, you get the starting equipment regardless of which one you take. So in effect, if you take the Farm Manager setup, you get 1.25 million and all your starting equipment. So you can sell the starting equipment, you can take out a loan. Oh, you don't have any land, well, buy the land. The yards are all in place, or the yard is all in place, so if you buy the land with the yard on, you've got all of the sheds and silos available. And yeah, I don't think it's... If I want to do my farm, I want to do my farm. I don't want to have what you think a New Farmer would benefit from on my farm. In some ways, Ravenport and Felsbrunn, even if you start on New Farmer mode, you can go in and demolish a load of the buildings and replace them with other buildings because they're all part of the default game assets. That's something I did on Ravensport. There's 4 or 5 decorations, plus the farmhouse, plus the silo, plus a shed. And so I would knock down one of the decorations and replace it with the maintenance workshop. I'd knock down one of the one of the decorations and turn it into a chicken coop. Or whatever. It's almost, well, the ground's already prepared for me. But I want my own farm. I don't want your farm. That's why, that was one of the selling points of Farm Sim 19. And maybe I want to get and make use of it. Yeah, the Michigan map is good for multiplayer because it has multiple yards on the map. The problem is the yards are all pre-built. They all have storage buildings. They have a fuel supply. They have a maintenance shop. But you can't change any of them. Now, they don't have silos, so you're going to have to buy yourself a silo after you've bought the land. but you've got all the parking for your vehicles, and you might need a house so that you can do the overnight sleep. But it's a good designed map for multiplayer, because you can have multiple farms. And I think there's a couple of others like that, where they've provided you with a yard, and you either start with the land that the yard is on or you don't. But you can't edit the yard. But if there's more than one yard, it does give you the option of which one you start with. And some of these maps contain sort of pre-made yards. So you start with all the buildings, but there may be one or two plots of land that you could build your own yard on if you wanted to. Okay, this is where I complain about not being able to read the words at the top left of the screen, because I'm pointing at the sky. Okay, it's 11:15. So I probably should have ended this quite a while ago. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this on a worker. And I will say thank you for watching tonight. I'm going to call it here because it's getting late, it's a work night. And I have kids to kick out of bed in the morning and attempt to get breakfast without a kitchen. So, have a good evening, those of you that aren't going to bed, and have a good day tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow with... I'm thinking I'm going to do another round of solo ETS2 and do a little bit more of the event transports. So, have a good time, and I am out of here.